The Nebula's Rest was the kind of establishment where species from across the galaxy came to forget their troubles. Located on Outpost Zeta 7, it served as neutral ground where treaties were signed, deals were made, and travelers found momentary peace. Tonight, however, peace was about to shatter. Aliana moved gracefully between tables, her scaled hands balancing a tray of Andromedan ales. She was Drakari, one of the dragon folk whose proud civilization had been conquered by the Zelthrian Empire 3 generations ago. Now her people served as labor across occupied worlds, their wings clipped both literally and metaphorically. The iridescent scales that ran along her arms and neck caught the dim lighting as she navigated the crowded room. At table 7 sat Ambassador Krelth, a high-ranking Zelthrian diplomat whose bulk spread across the chairs. His entourage of officials laughed at his crude jokes, their crystalline bodies refracting light in sharp, cutting patterns. They were celebrating another successful annexation the freehold of Proxima had just surrendered. Without firing a shot, David sat alone at the bar, nursing a whiskey that had traveled 6 parsecs to reach his glass. The human mechanic had grease permanently etched under his fingernails from working the docks, repairing ships that limped into port. He'd seen a lot in his 5 years on Zeta 7, but he'd never gotten used to how the Zelthrians treated conquered species. Aliana approached table 7 with fresh drinks. As she leaned forward to place a frosted mug before Ambassador Krelth, someone from the adjacent table stumbled backward, bumping her elbow. The ale sloshed, and a few drops no more than a teaspoon splattered onto Krelth's ornate diplomatic sash. The ambassador's conversation stopped mid-sentence. "You clumsy lizard." Krelth's voice boomed across the establishment. Conversations died. Music faded. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Aliana stepped back, her head bowing immediately in the submissive posture her people had learned to adopt. "My deepest apologies, Ambassador. It was an accident. Please, let me." "An accident?" Krelth rose to his full height, towering over her. "Your kind are always making accidents. This is a ceremonial sash, worn by my grandfather during the conquest of Draka Prime, your home world, if I recall correctly." The cruelty in his words was deliberate. Aliana's scales seemed to lose their luster as she trembled. "Perhaps this is fitting," Krelth continued, his entourage chuckling. "Dragon filth soiling the very symbol of your people's defeat. Tell me, server, were you even born free, or have you known chains all your life?" "I was born." After, Aliana whispered, her voice barely audible. "Speak up when addressing your betters." Krelth slammed a crystalline fist on the table, making glasses jump. David's fingers tightened around his whiskey glass. "I said I was born after the conquest, sir." Aliana's voice shook. "And you'll die in service too, I imagine." Krelth circled her like a predator. "Your people had their chance at greatness and squandered it. Now you exist to serve those with actual vision. Kneel and apologize properly, and perhaps I won't have you terminated from this establishment." The room held its breath. Everyone knew the power Krelth wielded. One word from him could end careers, close businesses, or worse. Aliana's knees began to bend. "That won't be necessary." David's voice cut through the tension as he stood from the bar. His boots struck the floor with deliberate weight as he crossed the room. He wasn't tall, most species here dwarfed him, but something in his posture made others step aside. "And who are you?" Krelth's eyes narrowed at the human. "Name's David. I fix ships down at Dock 12. He positioned himself between the ambassador and Aliana. "And I'm thinking this conversation is over." Krelth's laughter was like breaking glass. "A human. You're barely a step above her on the galactic hierarchy. Your species hasn't even achieved full integration into civilized space." "Maybe not," David said evenly. "But we've got this funny thing about bullies. We tend not to like them much. I am a diplomatic representative of the Zelthrian Empire. You have no authority here." David smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You're right about that. I'm just a mechanic. But I'm also the guy who fixed your flagship's quantum drive last month. Remember, the one that was about to catastrophically fail mid-jump?" Krelth's expression shifted slightly. "Funny thing about that repair," David continued, his voice conversational. "I documented everything, including the fact that the failure was caused by deliberately substandard parts. Embezzlement of military-grade components. I believe that's a capital offense in your empire. You wouldn't dare. I've already transmitted the report to 3 different human news networks and the Galactic Oversight Committee. It's sitting in their inboxes with a delayed release. All I have to do is send a confirmation code. David pulled out a small datapad. Or not send the cancellation code in the next hour. Your choice. The ambassador's entourage shifted uncomfortably. One whispered urgently in Krelf's audio receptor. You're bluffing, Krelf said, but uncertainty crept into his voice. Am I? David's thumb hovered over the datapad. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to apologize to Aliana. You're going to leave a generous tip. And you're going to walk out of here quietly. Then I'll cancel the report release. The Zelthrian Empire will hear of this threat. I'm counting on it. David's eyes hardened. Let them hear that a human mechanic stood up for a Drakari waitress. Let them hear that we don't kneel to tyrants. That's kind of our thing, Ambassador. You should study Earth history sometime. We've got a long tradition of telling empires where they can shove their sashes. The silence stretched. Krelf's crystalline face reflected a dozen different emotions: rage, calculation, fear. Finally, he reached into his garment and pulled out a credit chip, slamming it on the table. My apologies for the misunderstanding, he said through clenched mandibles. The words directed at Aliana, but his eyes locked on David. Excellent choice. David lowered the datapad as Krelf and his entourage swept toward the exit. When they were gone, the bar erupted in conversation. Aliana stood frozen, scales shimmering with confused gratitude. You didn't have to do that, she said softly. David shrugged, returning to his bar stool. Yeah, I did. Besides, I really did document that shoddy repair work. Was going to report it anyway, just moved up my timeline. Aliana looked at the credit chip Krelf had left. It was worth 6 months of wages. She picked it up with trembling hands, then walked to the bar and sat beside David. Thank you, she said. I don't even know what to say. Don't need to say anything. David finished his whiskey. But if you're ever interested, I could use help in the shop. Turns out standing up to ambassadors is bad for business. Might need to lay low for a while, and I'm terrible at organizing parts. For the first time that night, Aliana smiled a genuine expression that made her scales shimmer like starlight. I'd like that, outside. 3 other Drakari dock workers who'd witnessed everything through the window began spreading the story. By morning, it would reach a dozen worlds. The tale of a human mechanic who'd faced down a Zelthrian ambassador for a waitress. He didn't even know. It wasn't the first time humanity had punched above its weight class. It wouldn't be the last.